លោកអ្នកនាងជាទីមេត្រីនៅពេលនេះយើងនឹងធ្វើកិច្ចសម្ភាសន៍ពិសេសមួយជាមួយនឹងលោក Brett Adam ដែលជានាយកប្រតិបត្តិនៃអង្គការឃ្លាំមើលសិទ្ធិមនុស្សអន្តរជាតិ Human Rights Watch នៅក្នុងសហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកហើយនៅពេលនេះខ្ញុំបានជួបលោកនៅក្នុងទីក្រុង Stockton នៃរដ្ឋ California បាទជំរាបសួរលោក Brett Adam Hi how are you Brett Adam
Good hi how you doing
I'm good very nice to meet you in person here today
Thank you
Yeah, and Mr. Brett, regarding to the current situation in Cambodia, regarding the Chinese, the information of the accused of Chinese military base in Cambodia, what is your comment on that?
I actually don't have any comment on that. I have no idea whether it's an actual military base or not. So we're all trying to figure out what's happening, whether or not it is a military base, whether there's an agreement with the government. Of course, the Wall Street Journal published a very explosive story making that accusation, and the Cambodian government is now trying to explain that it's not true, but I don't have any information about that.
So what do you say if Cambodia, by any chance, any means to allow the happen to have Chinese like military base or build airports or build any city that under Chinese control. So what is the obstacle for the Cambodian, in general?
Well, as a human rights organization, we don't take a position on whether countries can have military allies. We take a position on whether human rights abuses are committed. So if Cambodia wants to enter into a defense relationship with China or United States or Thailand or Zimbabwe or Argentina or anyone else in the world, that's up to them. We don't have any view about that.
So but do you think that Cambodian recently it seems like turns a lot to China? So and people are concerned that because China is that everybody know that it's not a respects human rights country in the world. So if Cambodia strongly turn to China, so what will the human rights, respect, democracy in Cambodia is going to look like?
Yeah, well, we are very concerned about Cambodia becoming too dependent on China, and for China providing cover for Cambodia for its human rights violations. So China has been actively trying to support Cambodia in the international fora like the Human Rights Council. We know that China is providing a lot of assistance to the Cambodian government, and a lot of that assistance is based on the idea that Cambodia will support China internationally. So Cambodia and China became very close, as you know, when Hun Sen blocked an ASEAN joint statement on the South China Sea. Hun Sen basically he presided over the first ASEAN summit without a communique. And China was very grateful for that. So they've been repaying Hun Sen a lot. Why do we care about that? Because China does not ever push for the Cambodian people's interests. They have a relationship with the Cambodian government and elites, both the political elites and the business elites. But their role in Cambodia is not based on the well-being of Cambodians. They don't support democracy. They don't support human rights. They don't support the rule of law. And we think that China's role in Cambodia is very positive when it comes to development aid that builds infrastructure or supports human needs, but overall is very negative because they're basically helping to keep a dictator in power.
But Japan and also America is trying to prevent China from more influence in Asia, in Southeast Asia. And recently the U.S. Congress also just passed the bill HR 526 in order to sanction Hun Sen's government by Magnitsky Acts, something like that. So right now the bill is in the Senate. So if the bill will be passed and signed by the president to become a law, and that law will be sanctioned Hun Sen, do you think that sanction will be effective to sanction Hun Sen at this point?
Well, if the sanctions are applied comprehensively and they're applied against all the people who fall under the global Magnitsky definition, then they could be very effective, because that would be the dirty dozen that supports Hun Sen other senior military and security officers, and possibly even some of the business people who are providing money to Hun Sen, because Hun Sen stays in power because of money. People often think it's because of guns, but those guns are bought with money, and the allegiance of the generals and the soldiers is bought with money. If those generals don't get their money out of this regime, they might look elsewhere, and they might decide that they don't support Hun Sen. So that's the logic of these kind of sanctions. Obviously, the main purpose of the sanctions is to highlight the human rights records of the people who are being sanctioned. They should be named and shamed. And that's the first thing that Global Magnitsky does. But after that, it could have an effect of causing rifts inside the leadership. Obviously, Hun Sen will try to prevent that. Obviously, China will be looked to try to provide more support so that doesn't happen. But you know, there's a lot of people, including in the Cambodian military and police, who are sick of Hun Sen. They don't want this kind of dictatorial rule.
So far, you know, 1 out of the 12 dirty dozen that, you know, Human Rights Watch released a report about that so far, and only one bodyguard, head of the bodyguard of Hun Sen's Heing, have been, you know, sanctioned by the U.S.
Right.
So, what about other? Do you believe that the new law, the new bill, will sanction more people?
Yeah, I actually think that some people will be sanctioned even if there is no new law. Our understanding is that there are discussions inside the U.S. government about other people in the Dirty Dozen, even if this legislation doesn't pass. And if the legislation passes, well, that's the purpose of the legislation. So it will happen. Sometimes it takes a while because, you know, for instance, the U.S. government has to make sure they don't sanction the wrong person. So if there is a person named Sao Soka, they can't just sanction any Sao Soka. They have to make sure they sanction the right Sao Soka, because there might be more than one Sao Soka, and they don't want to freeze the bank accounts of some other Sao Soka. So sometimes these things take a little while, but if this law is passed, yes, it will come into force.
So does Human Rights Watch have list or give some recommendation to the U.S. government, to the Congress, some more name and background of the people need to be more sanctioned?
Yeah, we've been in communication with Congress and the State Department about people that we think have violated the terms of the Global Magnitsky Law. So
how many more now?
I don't have the number in front of me, but it's a considerable number of people. It's not just Cambodia, by the way. We're doing this with Burma, and you know, recently we saw that the commander-in-chief of the Burmese military was sanctioned. It's countries all around the world that are subject to this law.
You said that the sanction will be effective to sanction the Hun Sen's men, Hun Sen's regime people who abuse human rights, democracy, and something like that. But you know, in terms of sanction, some other country like Burma or Venezuela or some other country that have strong backed by China, they still have more power, like, you know, and they don't care about the sanction. So how can you make that sanction become, like, you know, really work?
Well, look, sanctions are first and foremost naming and shaming. It's immoral for people who have committed serious human rights abuses to be able to travel to the U.S., for example, to be able to become very wealthy, as all these people around Hun Sen are. So the main purpose is just to identify them, name them, shame them, and try to freeze their assets. If it has the effect of leading to reform and change in Cambodia or any other country, that's great. But that's not the primary purpose. You know, think about it like if we were standing on the street right now and somebody went by here and committed a crime, we would expect the police to arrest them. And if they were, say, running a drug trafficking operation and became a millionaire, we would expect the police to take their money away from them. That's basically what Global Magnitsky would do, because the Cambodian state is refusing to do that. These people have committed crimes. When we say human rights violations, we're also saying crimes. They've committed crimes. And they've gotten illegal wealth out of it. And the Cambodian government is not doing anything about that. So that's where Global Magnitsky comes in, or other kinds of sanctions from the United States or the European Union or others.
So, but if they're strongly supported by China like that, so how can, you know, people like believe that sanction will be effective or a sharp thing to those people, you know.
Well, let's see what happens. You know, once people are sanctioned, maybe other countries will have different policies towards those people at least. I don't expect China will change its policy towards Cambodia overnight, but it may not want to have these people coming to their country. That may create an image problem for China. As much as China is a bully and they are trying to increase their role around the world, they're looking for regional control, if not domination, they have to care about their image. It doesn't look good for China to be doing business with people who have very bad human rights records or are extremely corrupt.
You know, like since the Chhem election, the fake election in Cambodia in 2018, at least one person has been sanctioned, and at least some law have been like proposed in the U.S. Congress and stuff like that. Some little bit noise by the U.S. government, but we don't see more kind of dynamic of action by the Washington to Cambodia. So what is your recommendation? What is your suggestion to the Washington to deal with Phnom Penh's government?
Yeah, well, Radha, when you interviewed me before the election, I told you that if Hun Sen went forward with a one-party election, it would take time, but there would be consequences and there would be a reaction. And that's what we're starting to see now. I was afraid that Cambodia wasn't the top of the international agenda and that people weren't paying much attention to Cambodia. And I actually said to you in an interview that diplomats and governments that are friendly to Hun Sen would be giving him good advice if they said, you may be able to pull off a fake election and have a one-party parliament, but there will be consequences. Don't think because the day after the election there's no consequences that those consequences won't come, because they will. And we're starting to see them.
What is your expectation with that consequence?
We're seeing them with the legislation in the U.S. Congress. We're seeing them with the everything but arms process with the Europeans, where Cambodia could lose its trade preferences, its trade privileges. So remember, Cambodia signed up to an agreement that they would get access to the European market if they followed international human rights standards. So if those get taken away, it's Cambodia's fault. It's not the EU's fault. The EU is simply saying, we give access to people who are good behavior, who have good behavior. We take it away when there's bad behavior. So these things are happening. They're happening slowly, much more slowly than I would like as a human rights activist, much more slowly than a lot of Cambodians would like. But they're happening. And 2019 and 2020 could be the years where we see real consequences for, you know, decades of violations of human rights, decades of fake elections.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bredam. At the end, what is your, you know, what would you like to tell to the Cambodian people that are listening to you right now?
Stay positive, stay united, be active, press the governments in the United States on the current legislation. Talk to, if you're watching this in Europe and you're a citizen of a European country, the EU needs to hear from you that you support their review of the EBA process. Stay united. The goal of Hun Sen is to divide the political opposition and divide the public, to divide the diaspora. Don't let it happen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bredam, for your time. Appreciate that. Thank you.